Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion. Welcome to the new year. It is January 4th, 2021, and it is time to talk about some lower 48 weather. We're going to get to that. As you can see from the graphic there in the title card, winter is coming. It's going to be a pretty active time of it, winter weather-wise, in the east part of the United States, probably from about mid-month on through a good deal of February, it looks like. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Kind of an introduction to it today. But first, some things of note as we approach. That's still a ways away, but we are getting closer. Less than 5 months away now from the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season. And after all, that is what HurricaneTrack and HurricaneTrack.com and Mark Sutton are known for. Hurricanes. So we will start in the world of the tropics first. No major changes to the sea surface temperature anomalies profile. Colder than average in the tropical Pacific, the La Nina holding on fairly firmly. And in the Atlantic, especially the main development region here, warmer than the long-term average by about a half a degree or so. We continue to see the anomalous warmth up here in the northwest Atlantic. Some of these anomalies approaching 5 degrees plus Celsius. Very, very warm compared to the long-term average, and none of this appears to be changing anytime soon. If we look at the Southern Oscillation Index, today's number alone is pretty remarkable at plus 25. The 30-day average now is knocking on the door of 18, and even the 90-day average now is higher than October and November. Those numbers, the 90-day average, which obviously takes a little longer to change because you have a larger sample size. But boy, the 90-day average is now up to 10. So very strong pressure readings across the tropical Pacific, especially the Southwest Pacific, that basically promote this favorable easterly wind pattern across the tropical Pacific here, keeping this circulation intact and really promoting the La Nina pattern. In fact, look at the area to the north here, what we would consider the main development region of the Pacific. If we look at the Atlantic first, this is the typical MDR area that we watch for hurricanes in the Atlantic. If you draw a similar rectangle in the Pacific, in this general area, I mean even out towards the area south of Hawaii, look at how much this has cooled off. So it's not just down at the equator. We're talking about the main development region, so to speak, of the tropical Pacific, the cyclone areas. You don't get cyclones at the equator because of the lack of Coriolis force. I think we all know that, right? Well, that's the reason why. So it's this area north of the equator at about 10 degrees latitude and points north, and all of that has cooled off as well. Even the Gulf of California up here, off the coast of California itself, colder anomalies. That's very interesting. We have a cold Pacific and a warm Atlantic. I know it's only the first few days of January, but this is a signal that we will be watching. We cannot ignore it, and it has implications for the upcoming hurricane season as well as winter storms and eventually severe weather season. And the reason for severe weather season, if the Gulf is warmer than average, and there's a little part of it that is, and you get a lot of return flow around any kind of strong Bermuda high out here in the spring, and you pump that warm water, the water vapor anyway, the energy into the south and the lower plains and even up into the upper Midwest, and you get these fronts coming out of Canada, you get a big battle line in there, and yeah, we could have an active severe weather season. So all of this matters, not just for hurricane season. That's why I watch it. So again, the Southern Oscillation Index, none of these numbers are budging. We'll watch this on a weekly basis and see where it goes. The actual sea surface temperatures, I like looking at this. The Gulf of Mexico, that 26 degrees Celsius isotherm right there holding strong. Even a couple of little islands there of 27 Celsius poking their way up into the Gulf of Mexico through the Yucatan Channel coming out of the Northwest Caribbean. Wouldn't it be nice to be down in the Cayman Islands down here? They don't show up on this particular resolution. Water temperatures 81, 82 degrees. That would be great. We'll get there. It's not too long from now. I mean, considering that the days are getting longer and it's just a lag, right? It takes, each day there's more incoming solar radiation, and so the oceans are going to gradually start to warm up again as they pull that heat in, and they store that heat trapped in the oceans as latent heat, and that gets released as humidity and energy in the lower levels of the atmosphere. It's starting. It's just a very slow process because, well, that's a good thing. It takes a while, which is good. We can't have everything flip back to being positive for hurricane development in January. That won't work. We have to have some time off. So Gulf, a little bit warmer than it should be, but nothing alarmingly so. But this is interesting here. Let's just jump to this. Trying to move quickly here and do these a little faster this year and not drag on and on talking about off-topic stuff or whatever. There's room for that later. So let's move on to that being said, this idea of what we call the CAN-SIPs, because I'm going to show you 4 different graphics here that are quite interesting in and of themselves. So first of all, what is the CAN-SIPs? It is an acronym. It means that it's Canadian, so this is from Environment Canada, and we can see that up here. Environment Canada is kind of like their weather service, and they do have their own Center for Climate Modeling and Analysis, right? So CAN-SIPs is their Canadian Seasonal and Interannual Prediction System, CAN-SIPs, and it consists of 2 coupled, and that's important, atmosphere, ocean, and land physical climate models, the CAN CM3, the CM4, and this is all getting into a lot of details, but the bottom line is that the CAN-SIPs is helpful to kind of look into the crystal ball. The Canadians provide a crystal ball, the European Center does, the ECM, the UK Met will do the same thing, and then the CFS does, but this is a look at the CAN-SIPs coming out of Environment Canada. And what does it show? Well, I think you will agree that this is very interesting. This is the CAN-SIPs modeling for the late summer months here of August, September, October of this year. See, this is the time frame valid for August, September, October. And these are the sea surface temperature anomalies in degrees Celsius. What do you see? Well, we see the La Nina holding on here in the tropical Pacific. And then we see a very warm Atlantic, almost having the classic horseshoe shape of the warm AMO. It's just missing a little bit south of Iceland, but otherwise, that is a very favorable look for Atlantic hurricanes. And, okay, we'll just see, right? This is just kind of your first look ahead, and I know it's months out, but I'm going to say this, too. Remember, last April, and we're only a few months from April. It's not like April is 6 months out, okay? Last April, March and April, but definitely April of 2020, the models did a pretty good job at identifying the larger pieces of the puzzle that would shape the 2020 hurricane season. This stuff right here, these big signals, are getting better. They really are. And that is science working in our benefit, that we can look ahead, and I don't know exactly how they do it. Yes, sitting down with maybe the head of Environment Canada would be great one day. Maybe we can do that, even if it's over Zoom, right? But, I don't know how to explain, and we can't get into those details today. But this is not voodoo science. This is not, some crazy model or whatever. This is pretty good stuff. The modeling is coming around. Again, you got the CAN-SIPs, the Euro, the CFS from the United States, and the UK Met. And then there's others, the JMA from Japanese Meteorological Agency. But this is a great first step that we can kind of look in that crystal ball and see what's coming for the upcoming season. And it shows an anomalously warm Atlantic and the La Nina holding on. What about upward motion? What we call the velocity potential. Well, this too is a bit concerning. So I'm going to draw down arrows here because this is sinking motion in the reddish area. That's a terrible arrow. Let's try that again. This is sinking motion. This is rising motion. So you have a sinking branch over where? The Pacific. Rising branch over the Indian Ocean spilling across Africa, and because of the Mercator projection of the map, it would, if we could show a 3D rendering, that'd be great. But it spills over into Africa as well. So this is Rising motion is the green, sinking motion is the orange or red, whatever you call it, reddish color, and the Atlantic itself generally neutral to favorable. So this is going to spit out tropical waves, and you know how the story goes. This is a very favorable look. You couldn't actually, in my opinion, create maps that render a more favorable pattern than what we're seeing. And it's early, yes, but again, I got to emphasize the science is making some incredible strides at this long-term stuff, and we're only talking about a few months out. How are they doing it? Again, I don't know. I don't know. It's magic. It's incredible. It's smart people, supercomputers, whatever. This is the science, folks, and it's helpful because we can at least wrap our brains around the fact that, okay, we might really want to pay attention to the upcoming hurricane season. It gives us clues. It's just like going to the doctor and they tell you, look, you might be gaining some weight, your blood pressure's going up, maybe a CAT scan reveals some very early signs of some kind of a problem that you can then mitigate with changes to your health. Now, there's sometimes that you can't. And just like with the weather, you cannot prepare for a Category 5 hurricane and a 20-foot surge. There's only so much you can do. It's probably going to wipe out your house or whatever. I get that. But at least we know that the signals are there that we can do what we can on a larger scale to get ready. And here's another one of those signals. The CANSIP's total accumulated precipitation mean anomaly. Fancy way of saying, look at the green down here, which shows you the tracks. This is it. This is like very favorable down in the deep tropics. Precipitation anomalies are on the positive side, indicating what? Strong tropical waves coming out of Africa, developing into tropical cyclones down here. Try to draw some hurricanes in there. And they go in these different directions. Not a lot of activity right off the East Coast, according to this version of the CANSIPs. And this was initialized right there on New Year's Eve. We'll see how this evolves. But this shows you the deep tropics could be very active with a pathway towards the Western Atlantic Basin. And that includes the islands here, Lesser Antilles, Greater Antilles, maybe the Gulf of Mexico, Central America. We'll see how this evolves. But another sign of activity that we need to be ready for. And finally, the wind shear, also about as favorable as a look as you could, I won't say want, but if you're looking for trouble, so to speak, this is what you would look for. A reduced wind shear overall vector down here in the deep tropics. Very favorable overall. These 4 different graphics here from Environment Canada painting the picture as we move ahead. Something we definitely want to keep an eye on, and that's what we will do in the off season as we move through the next few months. All right. Now for lower 48 weather. Like the old meme says from Game of Thrones, brace yourselves, winter is coming. Yes, I know it's overused, but it looks like it's coming. We can see, and again, this is where the weather is, to me, so fascinating. We can see patterns when we know that bursts of tropical cyclone activity are coming. We can see these a few weeks out now. We can't see, on August 27th, a hurricane is going to make landfall in X location. We're not that good yet, we being the science and the human species, whatever. But it does work as well also for winter weather and large-scale weather patterns. And we're starting to see that unfold as we go forward for lower 48 weather. So what do we see currently? First of all, that is the leftover snow in Texas. Yep, this is a true color, natural color as it's called. For the daytime you get natural color, nighttime it's shortwave infrared. And you can see the snow cover there in parts of Texas. And I believe that's White Sands, New Mexico, I think. This would be snow in the Rockies, if you want to do any skiing. There's the snow in the Sierra Nevada. And then this is a lot of cold air in the upper levels, mid-levels, and this is a storm system coming into the Pacific Northwest, low pressure in here. Lots of rain in the lower elevations, snows in the higher elevations, and even, yes, some moisture trying to work its way in towards central northern California, maybe even eventually the southern part of the area and into the deserts. We'll have to wait and see. But what is happening is really interesting because, as Eric Webb has been tweeting a lot about lately, this negative NAO, and you see that highlighted right there, the negative NAO, which is the North Atlantic Oscillation, is the classic pattern to funnel cold air down into the lower 48. Why is that? Well, in this anomaly chart, this is Greenland right up here, and you got anomalously high pressure sitting up over Greenland, and that creates kind of this block in the pattern. And if you can break down the ridge over Alaska enough, and then you see the jet stream pattern right through here, what do you notice? You notice, let me use in this one the color red. Look, just follow the contours, the height lines. Your source region for the air is where? Up here. It's coming right out of Canada. It gets dislodged, and so instead of everything just moving briskly along, you get this big roadblock here over the North Atlantic, specifically over Greenland, and you're able to funnel this Arctic and polar air down into the lower 48, coming out of the cold Rockies and the plains, especially of Canada, because remember, cold air is dense, it settles and it thickens up, and then it moves, okay? And we call that advection. It moves laterally, and this is the process to get that going. This block over Greenland, there's the flow down to the lower 48, and then if you have an active enough southern branch of the jet stream, and it's hard to see that, because that can be transient, the energies combine, the cold air and then the energy from the southern branch, and you get a storm track, who knows exactly how, but this is the pattern for a big active winter setup for the east, and that's what Eric Webb has been talking about. And as he says, if this will reload, hard to think of a better looking pattern than this for cold and snow in the southern U.S. I mean, he's a southerner, he's in North Carolina like I am. Unlike earlier this month, blocking north of Alaska will inject some legit cold air into the CONUS, which is the lower 48, by the third week of January, and storminess should continue nearly unabated with a persistent negative NAO. Now, the other thing about that negative NAO, it tends to slow the trade winds down, if we go back to this, across the Atlantic, because the pressures over the North Atlantic are lower. It's the negative version of the North Atlantic Oscillation, and so the trades down here will slow, and the Atlantic will be able to warm a little bit. So I think this is all going to lead to a feedback mechanism, this winter weather, that could actually impact the upcoming hurricane season. Isn't that crazy? It is. So there you go. So this is the pattern that's coming. It's not quite here yet. We have a few storm systems to watch, but nothing major just yet. So real quick look at the National Watch Warning Map. Most of the activity of any consequence, at least the most of it, is out on the Pacific Northwest. Winter storm watches, warnings, winter weather advisories, even some flood watches in here. A myriad of weather, as you'd expect with that active storm pattern coming into the Pacific Northwest. A departing low pressure area here off the east coast of New England. A few snow showers. Excuse me, nothing major. The dog's barking, and that's annoying, but we'll get through it. It's a kind of a quiet week for the most part, but what's coming kind of gives us a look at this pattern that Eric's talking about in the days ahead. So there's the departing storm system right off the coast of New England. Here's our system coming into the Pacific Northwest. And as we kind of move this through the next week or so, kind of quiet for now, but we're setting the stage for some fairly active weather. We've got this first system that comes in, maybe some snows in the Appalachians, parts of the western Piedmont of North Carolina. That system scoots on out, and then it's just one storm after another. Eventually, the cold air will drain down into the lower 48 here, coming out of Canada, and then these southern storms will take advantage of that, and we're going to start to set the stage for 1, 2, maybe 3 powerful nor'easters sometime later in the month. It doesn't really show up yet. I mean, that's a sizable right there, about 8 days out. We'll see how this evolves. Maybe some snow and wind and coastal issues. We'll see. But the big ones are coming probably towards the end of the month and into February. And it's interesting because February is to the winter season like September is to the hurricane season. February is your peak winter storm month for the lower 48. So just keep that in mind. So I think after about 2 weeks, it's going to be game on for a lot of winter weather, and I will be getting out in it and doing what we do in the off season, covering some winter storms, all kinds of stuff. So stay tuned for that. All right, before I say goodbye, the Hurricane Highway Season 1, all 8 episodes have finally been finished. I wrapped all of that up on January 1st. I was delayed by a couple of months because the hurricane season was a lot more busy than I thought, and a few weeks of that too because of pandemic issues. I couldn't get interviews in with people like I wanted to. You know, 2020 was hard, right? It was a struggle, but I am very proud to say that I have finished what is essentially an 8-episode, it is, streaming series. It's an episodic series called The Hurricane Highway. 5 of those episodes are already available on Amazon Prime. You just look for The Hurricane Highway, and on YouTube in the playlist. On January 15th, all the episodes will be available for everybody. Right now, the final 3 episodes are only available for those who have supported the project, and that would be our patrons via Patreon. So if you want to sign up on Patreon, the link is in the description of the video. You can have access immediately. So a huge thank you to the patrons that help to fund it, create ideas, give me suggestions, encouragement, and that's what crowdfunding is all about. So I'm very happy to finish the series. The very last episode is about Typhoon Tisoi last year. Well, 2019 now, 2 years ago, or whatever, more than a year ago. And then episode 7 was about the coastal storm in November of 2019. Episode 6 was all about Imelda and Nestor in 2019. Nestor, not too big of an event, but Imelda was another one of those multi-billion-dollar flood events in Texas, if you recall, in September of 2019. So the series is finished. Now I start working on Season 2, which will take a look back at the 2020 hurricane season. I will start production on that very soon. We're going to beef up the overall production value. Going to work with a few people to create some motion graphics. Have a little bit more funding now thanks to our Patreon support, and really create an ongoing series. This Hurricane Highway thing, I say we just keep it going as long as we have stuff to do. Right? Why not? what else is there to do? You can't go to see any blockbuster movies, so you might as well. There's a couple out, but you might as well, and we put a creative spin on what nature throws at us to kind of teach you from a science perspective about what we do. And that's what the Hurricane Highway is all about. So look for it, publicly available on January 15th on YouTube. Hoping to get it on Facebook as well, and on Amazon Prime. And again, a big, big thank you to our patrons. If you want to become a part of that, and you can even have your name in the credits if you're a patron at a certain level, Patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. A lot of benefits. We'll talk about that more in the coming weeks as we start to get towards the hurricane season and active winter weather and whatever. We'll make sure you know all about what we're doing through the crowdfunding. Of course, that's how we fund it, but it's also this awesome community. And again, thank you all very much. All right, that's it for me, from me, whatever. It's not it for me. I'm still here. That is it from me. Mark's gone. Poof. No, I'm still here. I'm trying to sign off. That is it from me for this first update of 2021, and it's great to have you aboard as always. Have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there. We will keep track of the winter weather, the off-season hurricane stuff, and we'll talk about it again next week. All right? Have a good rest of your afternoon. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again next Monday.